What is going on, guys? My name is Amos and I'm back again with another video. And in this series of videos, our goal is to basically write an API that wraps around JDBC. Now, what is JDBC? Now, if you've been programming in Java, and if you've been working with Java for some time now, and if you've tried managing databases or working with relational databases, you've probably come across JDBC, because that is the API that we use to manage our databases. If you want to insert information into a particular table, create a table, query information from that table, delete information, and anything, the CRUD operations that we can perform on a database, all those things are possible with JDBC. Now, the problem is that JDBC is like a low-level API, and you have to write a lot of code for you to sort of achieve, whatever I've listed, things like inserting data into tables, querying information. You have to write a lot of code. You have to take into consideration the closing of connections. Now, of course, you can use a try with resources, something like a try with resources feature, something like the try with resources feature that automatically closes the connection for you. But if you look at the code that you write for you to be able to achieve that, if you look at the entire the entire file that you've written, you see that you've done a lot of things. So our goal is to be able to abstract all those low level details, right? So, and we focus on we expose a minimalistic interface that someone can use, or that developers or anyone can use to sort of manage their database. All right, so they'll be able to choose the database they want to work with, and based on the database that they choose, we'll be able to choose the correct connector, right? We'll be able to choose the correct connector or the correct class that is going to help in managing the database that they want to manage. For example, in the case of MySQL, we'll choose the correct class that under the hood. So we'll abstract all that low-level stuff, and we'll only expose a minimalistic interface that is going to allow them to do exactly what they want. Now, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about and maybe what I'm saying, let me make you understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to quickly search for JDBC with Java, something like that, so that you see what you're supposed to do for you to be able to connect, to be able to manage your database. So I like Geeks4Geeks because I read a lot of their blogs, and I think it's a very good place to learn programming languages in general. So you can read this article, and I'll probably put the link to this particular driver, to this particular article in the description. Now, of course, you're going to want to ignore all these adverts and all that. Just focus on this JDBC part that we have here. So this is how you select the class, right? This is how you select the class, right? And after that, this is how you establish a connection. So driver manager.getConnection, you provide the URL to your database, your username, and also your password if you have a password, right? So this is what you're supposed to do. And for you to be able to execute some query, for example, if you want to query, you want to insert some values into some table of some particular database, you're supposed to first of all have this. You declare the statement or a prepared statement, and you do something like this, right? So you can see at the end of it, or you're supposed to close the statement and then the connection. But then you can also put this in a try with resources block, and that would automatically handle the closing of a connection and a statement. So you put this in a try with resources because the interface, or this particular part here, statement, implements the autoclosable interface. And so if you put it in a try with resources block, it should handle the closing of these particular resources automatically. Now, more on that a little bit later. All right, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So here is, they select the class, the driver. This is for MySQL. For PostgreSQL, it's something similar to this, but then it would have to be com.postgresql.something, okay, or something like that. Then here they return the connection. You can see, but our goal is to be able to abstract all this low level logic that we have here. We want to be able to abstract all of this and expose a minimalistic interface that someone can use to easily, for example, query, or get information from their database and insert something into their database, right? So this is how we work with JDBC. So here you can use a statement or a prepared statement. What I want us to do in this particular video is to is to have something like this, right? Is to have something like this. So we'll use design patterns such as the builder pattern to limit the number of arguments our constructor is going to receive. We'll use patterns like the factory pattern. We'll use the decorator pattern, the strategy pattern, the observer pattern for managing events. So we're going to be learning a lot. We're going to be learning a lot in this series of videos. So we're not just writing an API. We are also learning, the design patterns that are necessary and that are very, very crucial when it comes to building software that is scalable, software that is highly maintainable, and software that is very, very easy to use and something like that. So what I want us to achieve by the end of this particular series of videos is I want us to achieve the following. So this is how our interface is going to be. So we're going to mask all the low level details and we're going to have some class that we're going to call DB manager, right? We're going to have some class DB manager. It can actually be an interface. So it depends on how flexible we want our design to be. So for now, I'll just let it be. I'll just call it a class. So we might have a class DB manager. Now DB manager does exactly what the name its role is exactly what the name is implying. It manages everything. So it has connectors, it has handlers, it has query builders, it has everything, right? If you want to get some query builder, if you want to get some handler, you want to get a connector, this is how we will be able to we'll be able to work with it. This is where we'll be able to find it. And maybe someone can create an instance of this particular class, and then I'm going to call this maybe instance DB manager like so. And then we're going to use something like the builder pattern. We're going to use the builder pattern because what we have to do here is we have to do something like this. And maybe here we like put our password, our URL, something like our URL, and then here maybe our username, like so, our username, like so, and then here we put our password, something like this. All right. So this is what we can do. This is one thing that we can do here, but then we can use the builder pattern to come up with something like this. So I don't want our interface to look like this. I want it to be like this. So we'll have DB manager like so, and then we'll say dot and then connection builder. Now connection builder is going to be a nest. If you've looked at nested classes in JavaScript, in Java, sorry, not JavaScript. Java and JavaScript are totally different programming languages. So this is a class. The connection builder class is going to be a class inside the builder, the DB manager class, right? And then this is what is going to expose the builder, right? This is what is going to help us create a builder. And then I want it to look like this: dot with password or with URL. So it's more readable and it's actually very easy to understand if it's written like this. So with URL, maybe something like, and then here would enter our URL. For example, if it's in the case of MySQL, would do something like JDBC, colon MySQL, like so, and then colon // maybe localhost, like so, localhost, and then port 3306, something like this, and then the name of the database. So we can have maybe, let's say, testDB, like so. And then just after that, what I want to do is with password, right? You can see how easy, how readable this is. And then we can have something like with username, and then here we can have the username, right? We can have the username here. So username, something like this. And then same thing we can say with password, like so. and then here we'll provide our password like so. Now in the case of like if you are using XAMPP or something like that, the username here is going to be root by default, and then there will be no password. So you do something like this, and then if you have a different username, you put your username here. If you have a password, you put your password here, and then here we can say with DB. Remember that JDBC helps us manage, different databases. So we can work with MySQL, we can work with PostgreSQL, we can work with, many relational databases. So we want to work with, all the relational database management systems that that JDBC is going to support. And then maybe here we can have something like an enum DB type, and then they can say DB type dot MySQL. And then from this, we'll be able to select the correct connector, the correct builder and handler to work with based on this particular choice, DB type. And then also, if they have a file, if they have a properties file, then we can also maybe give them an option to do something like this. And then from properties, and then we can say, we can read everything from the file, and then we can say from properties, like so. And then maybe here they can provide, maybe let's say a link to the file, like so. Something like this. And then all of this, they can get rid of all of this if they want. So we are like exposing this particular interface. So you can see that it's very readable, very easy to understand, and you can almost guess what each of these what each of these is doing. With URL helps us to provide helps us provide the URL to our database with username and so on and so forth. So it's very easy to guess what this is happening. And then to get an instance of DB Manager, to get an instance of this class DB Manager, we have to call the method. We'll say build connection, something like this. We have to call build connection like so. This is what is going to return an instance of the class DB Manager, right? And then if you don't call this particular thing, you'll get an error. Okay, you get an error because what we have here is an instance of the class DB Manager, and this allows us to sort of configure, provide values for the attributes of this class DB Manager. The attributes are URL, username, password, DB type, and things like that. Now this DB type is an enum, and I want all this to be, now this is like the basic, we're actually talking about basic functionalities here. And so all these things, all these classes, DB Manager and the enum DB type are going to be in the core, I'm going to say they're going to be in the core file, in the core package. Now this package is going to have classes like DB Manager. So we're actually talking about the architecture of our API. And of course, we've not talked about the name, and maybe we're going to call this, I think, EasyDB. This might change, EasyDB or SimpleDB, anything. So I think I'll choose SimpleDB. I'll choose SimpleDB. So we'll call it SimpleDB. So we'll have a package core that is going to contain the basic interfaces and the basic enums or classes that are necessary for you to come up with the minimalistic, a minimal version of what you're supposed to do for you to be able to manage your database, right? So this is how they connect to the this is how they configure their connection, right? And then after this, if you want to get a connector, and then here we have the DB type like so, and then I think this is going to be a class like so. This is going to be a class. This is going to be an enum like so, and then we should also have an interface DB connector. Now, why is this going to be an interface? So remember, we'll be handling multiple databases, and maybe later on we'll add support for NoSQL databases such as MongoDB, for example, and many other non-relational databases, database systems that we can find out there. So this is going to be an interface that is going to contain methods such as connect, for example. In the case of MySQL and many of these relational database management systems, we're going to return a connection. In the case of MongoDB, for example, we might want to return MongoDB. So the connect method is going to sort of like return the correct thing, either connection, the connection class or interface, or the Mongo client, for example, or the JDIS in the case of Redis, for example. So things like that. So this is going to be an interface. So all these interfaces are going to be in this particular package. And then we might also have event manager. Like, so remember when we delete something from a table, we need to notify some other parts of the application that something has happened, right? That we've deleted something from the database, or that we've added something to the database, that we've gotten some results from the database, that we have an error, that this has happened. So whenever I want to notify other parts of the system that something has happened, well, we'll make use of the event manager. This might actually move to the events. Package. I'm not really sure what we'll do. And then I think this is going to be a class. And it depends on how flexible we want this particular thing to be. This might also change into something more flexible, into an interface, for example, that just exposes the methods. And in case you're wondering about what design pattern we'll be looking at here, we'll be talking about the observer. Pattern, something like this, right? And then we also want to have maybe DB query builder. And for example, you have things like select, where, the where clause, and things like that. We want to have methods that help us, handle that particular thing. And in the case of MongoDB, if you want to, maybe let's say, get some information from some collection, you actually have to provide the name of the collection, and a row in a table is the equivalence of a document. Okay, a row in a particular table is the equivalence of a document, and then a table is the equivalence of a collection, right? So we want to be able to handle all these cases here, but for now, forget about MongoDB and all those NoSQL databases. Now let's focus on relational databases like MySQL, for example. So here we'll have, I think this is DB query builder. So this will have methods like where, methods like select, methods like update, maybe from table, like so that they can specify the table. They can provide the name of the table or something like that. So methods like this, that will help us. And then I think we'll have a DB query handler. Now, why all this? The DB query handler is what helps us, get our results. In the case of MySQL, for example, we can write something like this. We can say select everything. Go ahead and grab everything. Maybe let's say from students, something like from students. If you have a table named students, like so. So this is going to grab all the rows, right? And then we'll use our handler to sort of like execute this particular, our handler will execute this particular query and return the results, through methods such as maybe get entries. I won't say get rows, because we might want to add support for databases like MongoDB in the future. And of course, if we say get rows, a row is a document, for example, right? So instead of like confusing people that would want to use our API for NoSQL databases, we would go for something more general, like get entries, for example. If they just want to know the columns, for example, in a particular and of course, we'll actually overload some of these methods. So that they actually do the correct thing. In the case of, depending on the database that the DBM DBMS that we choose, right? The database management system that we use. We might have to like provide overloads for these methods. Right, so we have get entries, for example, and then we'll maybe get field names. So these names are like more general. And in the case of MySQL, this could be like get column names, but then we don't have columns in maybe MongoDB or anything like that. So this is like more general. So get field names and maybe get entries. They might also specify the number of rows they want to return. So we'll provide an overload for the method get entries. And then this might be int, something like limit, for example, limit. And then they can say, okay, 2. And then that would return 2 rows. If the number of rows is less than the number that they provide here, then we'll just return everything. Okay, we'll just return everything. So something like that. And we'll have many other methods like maybe update field, something like this, update field. And then we'll make use of the collection API or the collection, we'll make use of collections in Java to be able to like provide all the, maybe we'll use a map here where the key is going to be the field or the column that the user wants to update. And then in the case of if we want to update, we also have to provide maybe if ID is the primary key, for example, we must update where ID is equal to ABCD and things like that. So we might have like 1 or we might have 3 parameters, I think. 3 parameters, and then the third parameter is going to be the map data structure that is going to contain the updates that we want to actually perform on a particular table or on a particular collection in the case of MongoDB. So how are they going to get, for example, the connector? How are they going to get the connector? So they don't have to worry about about the connector. They just have to like call. Just have to use the interface. It is through the interface DB connector, like so, and then we'll say connector, and maybe here we can say DB manager, like so. We can say DB manager. Remember that the DB manager has everything. It manages everything, and then we can have a method get connector, and then this is going to return the correct connector based on the DB type that we have here. So in the case of MySQL, it is going to select the correct thing, right? It is going to select the correct thing. In the case of MongoDB, it is going to select the correct thing, right? And then we can also, through the class or interface, because it depends on how flexible we want this to be, and then we can have something like event manager, like so. And we'll also get this through DB manager, like so, right? And then get, I think, event manager, like so, right? And then that would give us the event manager, like so. And yeah. And then how do they like use these things? For example, how do they use these things? How do they like build a query? How do they build a query? So building a query is going to be similar to what we've done here. Building a query is going to be similar to what we've done here. Building a query handler is going to be equivalent to, is going to be similar to what we've done here. Not equivalent, but similar to what we've done here. So if they want to build a query, it is through the interface DB query builder that has these methods that I've listed here, right? That I've listed here. Then we might have other methods. Maybe instead of saying from table, we can say target, like so. It's like more general, something like that. Anyway, we'll see as we like build this particular application. Right now, we're just talking about the architecture of our system, and of course, we have many other packages. So we also have a package for exceptions. So here we define our own exceptions. Right? So that's also something that we are supposed to learn. Remember, the connection manager, the DB manager has everything. So this is going to be dbmanager.get and then something like query builder. And of course, you can see how beautiful this minimalistic interface is. And then get query builder, that should give them the query builder like so, right? That should give them the query builder like so. And that should provide the query builder, something like this. And then maybe if we want from the query builder, we can maybe here they can say, we can have the method, they can chain, for example, .query. Then here they can provide their query, maybe I think something like this. This might change, everything here might change. Select everything from, maybe let's say students, might have something like this. Select everything from students, like so, right? Okay. And then if they want to, maybe we might have target, for example, and then this would be like, in the case of MongoDB, this would be like the name of the collection or something. So collection name, like so. Now I know I might not be making sense at this particular moment, but everything that I'm saying here is going to make sense when we start coding and writing implementing this particular logic that we have here. Maybe for the table name, they can say use here. If I don't want to like write everything here, then they can maybe, instead of like writing everything in the query section here, they can just provide the database name, for example, the database name. No, they can just provide the name of the collection name in the case of MongoDB, or the name of the table in the case of relational databases, and then use now this might not be very helpful, because here we are specifying in the URL here we have the database, so we'll be connecting to the correct database from here. So we might want to use this for something else, maybe for NoSQL databases. This might be used for something else, right? And then whatever. And I actually want this to be the way it is, like so. And then I want to do this with my handler. For example, I don't know, DB query handler. So right now we're just brainstorming, right? We're just brainstorming, and we will, of course, when we do the correct thing, some of these things might change. So here I might do like builder dot all of this that I have here, and then to get the handler, we'll have to say build handler or create handler or anything like that. And then we can actually, if we want to use the connector here and the event manager that we have here, what we can do here is introduce injections. So we can say with connector, something like with connector, and then they would provide the name of the connector here, and then with event manager, and then they'll provide the event manager here, something like that. Okay, so this query is executed. What this means is that this query is going to be executed with this connector that we have here and with this event manager that we have here to register all the events and things like that, right? And we might actually figure out a way to automatically inject these so that we can get rid of this bit that we have here and only have this part here, and then finally this part here. And then if we want to maybe, let's say, get information or anything like that, we might actually store all the information in something, in a structure like a list, for example, right? In a structure like a list where all the column or the field names are going to be strings. And then here we actually have to have objects, because some columns might have integer values, other columns might have floats, other columns might have strings and things like that. Okay, so we might want to have this particular thing, and then this has to be a map. Okay, it has to be a map. So every row and the value it contains, every field and the value it contains. And then maybe we can call this results, like so. And then we can have handler dot, if we want to get all the rows or all the documents, we'll say get entries. We call the get entries method that we have here, right? Something like this. And then now we know we can now loop through these results, and maybe we can have like helpers. We can have helpers, a package helpers, where we can provide, you know, helper methods for looping through these things here. But then you can actually now do this. So you can see that with this, you know, the statements, everything is going to be handled under the hood. Okay, we've managed to abstract all that, all that code we saw when we looked at, you know, the JDBC, an article on the JDBC with Java on, you know, Geeks for Geeks. So we looked at this, we've abstracted all of that, and then this is like this is what we're supposed to do. This is the only thing we're supposed to do for us to work with you know, this particular API. So we'll have many packages, and then starting from the next video, we'll start, you know, building our API. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.